Are we not doing videos this morning? How is everybody this morning? Great, good. Good. Ryan, sorry I talked over top of you.
No,
You're good?
I'm good. I'm fine. Thank you.
Excellent. So we'll call the meeting to order, and I'll ask, are there any additions to the agenda? Okay, so seeing none, can I have a motion to adopt the agenda, please?
I'll move that.
Seconded. Okay, all those in favor?
Aye.
It's carried. We have no minutes to adopt, so we'll move right on to petitions and delegations. Good morning, Kevin. How are you this morning?
Good morning. I'm well, thank you. How about everyone else?
Good.
Good. So I have Pete and I've been talking for a while about getting in front of council to chat with you guys about various parts of the OCP as we continue to move through the process. So I have a little bit of a presentation today in regards to the vision and guiding principles. I'd really like it to be more of a discussion than me sort of being a talking head to you guys. The intent is to give you sort of sort of where we're at with the draft for the vision and guiding principles, sort of recommendations on how to provide that framework for the plan itself, and have a little bit of discussion of what we've heard, where we're going, that kind of stuff moving forward. So I'm going to get this going. I'll share my screen here. Arg. I don't know if you've ever tried to use, I'll need the host to enable me to share screen, Pete. Don't know if you've ever tried to use PowerPoint and Zoom on a laptop before. it can be challenging.
Yeah, if you don't have dual screens, then you lose us, don't you, when you're...
Yeah. Okay, let's see if I can make this work. And here we go.
Who's got the landline still?
That's beautiful.
No, that's probably Ryan and his ringtone on his cell phone.
So
Can't find the screen to turn off the sound. Sorry.
No worries.
It's all good.
Can everybody see my screen?
Yeah.
Excellent. So like I was saying, really, I want this to be more of a discussion than me just flapping my lips at the mayor and council. My presentation really is, so I'm going to give a bit of an overview of why we actually need policies and a policy framework to start with. I've had lots of conversations with the focus groups and various individuals through the process, and a lot of people have asked, why do we need an OCP? What's the purpose? So I thought I'd start with giving a little bit of a framework of what's even the purpose of an OCP and how that works in favor for the community. Talk about, from that, I'll move on to like the importance of the vision and guiding principles and how that works in the context of an OCP. Then I'm going to summarize what we heard, talk about the draft vision we originally discussed and where we've got to with the vision based on all the feedback we've received so far, and then talk about sort of the guiding principles and sort of the framework for the community values and my recommendation on how we do that in the community plan. And then talk about next steps, which is really important to talk about where we're at, where we want to go, timing, all that kind of stuff, specifically in light that COVID really isn't going away very quick, and we're going to have quite a few restrictions for the foreseeable future and what that means for our process moving forward. So as I'm going through, if you have a questions, just ask your question and we'll discuss as we're going through this whole thing.
Did we lose Ryan, or is it you just off my screen? I think we might have lost him.
Oh.
Anyways, keep going. I just wanted to let Pete know if he can figure out where Ryan is.
Okay. So why do local governments have policies, and what is the fundamental importance of having a policy framework and a community plan? Well, all stems back to the fundamental reasons for local governments to exist, and one of the key responsibilities of local government is the idea of good governance. Good governance comes down to the idea of making good decisions for the community. And that's the fundamental purpose of a community plan. The community plan provides sort of a decision-making framework for council. So when council makes decisions, they're making it based on not just based on sort of case-by-case basis, but based on a broader vision and a framework of why decisions are made in a particular manner. Further on that, without an official community plan, it actually really restricts the authority of local governments to control land use. One of the fundamental purposes of a community plan is to manage and project land uses for the future, where those need to go within your community. Without a community plan, you have no authority to do that. You have no ability to tell people where and what they can put particular land uses within your community. You have no authority for development permit guidelines or development permits, no authority for variance permits. You're not allowed to do temporary use permits. You're not actually allowed to ask for additional information when someone comes and asks to do something on property, like traffic impact studies or servicing capacity studies, anything of that nature, if you actually don't have a community plan in place. Another one that I haven't listed here, one that I do think is also important, if you don't have a community plan in place that talks about parks and park dedication and things of that nature, the developer can actually choose to either give you money or land. You have no authority to request one or the other. It's up to the developer to choose that. So without the official community plan, it actually really restricts the authority and ability for a local government to actually manage land within their community. And that's the fundamental intent of a community plan itself. A couple of additional components. One of the key things in the Local Government Act is when you do have a plan in place, that when you do make your decisions, that the decisions you make are generally consistent with that plan and the vision that set out in that plan. And that's one of the intent, again, is that decision-making framework. With the plan being that statement of the community's goals, the fundamental intent or the theory behind the community plan is that if council is making decisions that are consistent with that policy framework and vision, that they're actually promoting and moving forward with sort of the vision and goals that the community has set out. So vision and guiding principles, I'll tie it back to that because that's what our fundamental conversation is going to be today. How does that work into this overall context or framework of a community plan? And what a vision and guiding principles really do is create the foundations for decisions for the other policy framework that you have within a plan and your other regulations that you may have made in your zoning bylaw and your community plan. Again, it comes down to that decision-making framework. So if we look at a situation where there's a proposal made in a community and there's no other existing policy framework within a plan or other policies, that you go back to that vision and guiding principles just to ensure that the decision you're making as a council ties it back to what the goals are for the community itself. And tying decisions, council decisions back to policy framework provides council, when questioned, to be able to go, well, we made this decision. These are the reasons we made this decision. And you can tie it directly back to the decision-making framework that has been provided to you through the visioning and community planning process. So this here is a diagram, which is very old, that I drafted years ago. And this is a decision-making framework that I've actually presented to numerous councils over the last 10 or 15 years. And it just really gives an idea of how all this is supposed to work together, at least theoretically, from the provincial legislation framework. And so you have your regional district, and Mount Waddington has a regional plan, and it creates its regional vision, objectives, and policies that apply to the entire region. When we get down to a town, this is the area within the red dotted line, you begin to create your local visions, your objectives, which actually then help to guide all your decisions under that. A land use designation is one of the key components of your official community plan, saying where bits and pieces, you know, where is residential going to go and industrial going to go. And from that is where your zoning bylaw, your zoning regulation comes from. So for example, if we talk about land use designation, you have a downtown land use designation, which the town doesn't yet, but you have a downtown land use designation. You can say, these are the kinds of things we want to see happening in our downtown. What that means then, it gives you justification to modify your zone to restrict particular uses. We've had lots of discussion with regards to industrial uses in the downtown in Port McNeill. This is what gives you the authority to deal with those kinds of uses or uses you do not want in a particular area. So again, it's that decision-making framework, and it provides a direction and justification for different decisions. That was really quick, but I thought I'd start there. I'm going to move on to sort of what we heard to date and move into the vision components. Do any of you have any questions with regards to this?
I have a question. It's Derek. I don't know if it's quite on topic, but once our OCP is done, how are changes, like, you know, stuff changes. So how can it be changed after the fact? So I'm just wondering on that.
That is a fantastic question. So you can amend an OCP just like you amend a zoning bylaw. But when you amend an OCP, you have to actually follow the fundamental same process as you did when you adopted an OCP. So if you're going to amend the OCP, depending on the scale of the amendment, you're going to have to go back out to public consultation, right? Going, okay, we're going to amend the OCP because there's a market change or a significant shift in Port McNeill. You open it up. Here's what our amendment's going to be. You have to take that amendment back out to the community and go, well, this is why we're amending it. Does this still meet the intent that the community wants to see within your town? And then, you know, you do your public consultation component, and then if everything proceeds, then you integrate the feedback you get from your town and integrate that into your amendment, and then you amend your OCP.
Ryan, do you have a question?
I do. Just looking at the vision statement, and I guess vision statements typically are pretty vague, so this one suitably fits that model. But I would like to know if there's a glossary of definitions for the terms that are used in here, and what those things actually mean. Because when I read access to the natural environment, well, we're all allowed to go outside, so we have that. A rural lifestyle, what is that exactly? Is it as seen from the eyes of people who actually live, work, and breathe the rural atmosphere, or is it as seen by people who live in the big city who come here and buy a house for a holiday and they want to have a rural lifestyle, which they define and may not be the same as what we think of it? So what's the definition? What is industrial heritage, and how does it relate to access? And of course, family, I'm not sure what that means exactly, how that fits in there, because it says it starts out with access too. So all these things, and I'm trying to, okay, access to family, access to industrial heritage. What do these things actually mean?
We'll get to that in a moment, if possible, Councillor Mitchell. But those are all really, really great questions.
Okay, thanks.
Anyone else before we go to the next? Okay. Go ahead, Kevin.
Perfect. So thank you very much, Councillor Mitchell. That was actually a great segue to move on to this next section. So one of the things that's very challenging with the amount of data that we've gathered through the mapping and through the interactive mapping session so far is how you summarize that and present that back. I've always found, this is a word cloud. Are you guys familiar with word clouds? I've found they're very effective for a quick sort of summary of the data. So I've taken as much of the data as I can as possible, and I've put it into a word cloud generator. And this is sort of what came out of it. And a lot of it's not surprising when, you know, with all the discussions that we've had as a group and discussions with the community. Just quick, how word clouds work is the words that are mentioned the most are the biggest in your word cloud. And so as you can see, there's some key things, housing being one of the primary concerns of the community right now, which is actually quite interesting in context of the housing needs study that actually says the opposite, that housing isn't a fundamental issue for Port McNeill right now, which is quite interesting. Waterfront and downtown, of course. And so it gives us an idea of sort of where those sort of values are lying right now. So when we look at this in the context of the original vision that we gave to the community, and this is the vision that was actually out of the Economic Development Plan from 2014. So this is the one that we discussed and we presented as part of the interactive mapping session. I chatted with many of the focus groups with regards to this vision. And in general, people generally agreed with the statement itself. You know, this is a great statement, however, and there's a lot of howevers. You know, one of my favorite was it's grammatically very poorly written. But there's all different other howevers. You know, we need this, we need this, and that's Councillor Mitchell. That's where some of those other concepts in what we're proposing as the vision came from. This came from conversation from sort of the word cloud and the assessment of all the data, the community values assessment that we completed as part of the interactive mapping session, and then discussion with the focus groups about how we need to sort of frame this. You had some really, really great questions with regards to what these things mean. And the answer is yes, there's a couple things we can do to provide greater clarity around some of these statements. What we could do is break the statement out and give some context, so a paragraph and out of context of what each of these key things mean for Port McNeill. And that's a very reasonable approach when you're dealing with vision statements that are sort of this blue sky statement, right? This big picture statement. What does it truly mean for the town? All of this came from the town. So when we speak of the idea of rural, this is what we've heard from the community. This isn't what we heard from outside the community. This is what a lot of people said is, we love this place because it's rural, we have access to the environment, we have access to nature. And this all came from the town, not from outside of the town. So this was drafted directly based on feedback by the community, and then put back to the community for comment. Councillor Cole.
I'm curious about the word entrepreneur.
Mhm.
Is that something that came up a lot? Because, like,
Yeah.
I like to think we're full of entrepreneurs, but I really don't get that feeling.
Yeah,
Here.
it did come up a lot, and you can actually see it. Actually, it came up in I believe in here a couple times too.
Okay.
I thought it did anyway.
I think we'd be a lot more entrepreneurial if there were more opportunities, land, and places for people to start businesses. But
Mhm.
that's
But yeah,
what we're working on. Yeah.
But the idea of entrepreneur and innovation and economic growth or an economic innovation was very common conversation that we had throughout the process so far. I suspect I got an update this morning on our survey. Online, we have 255 completed surveys, and I believe we have almost 100 hard copies. So probably one of the best turnout of surveys I've ever done in any process that I've ran in the sort of about 10 different OCPs I've done over the last few years. So I'm really, really impressed. And then that just means the quality of data that we're getting out of this is going to be unbelievable. I'm so excited about it.
That's fantastic.
Yeah. So so anyway. Yeah. Planners don't get too excited a lot of times. But that's one of the things that makes us really excited is when you see these many people involved and the kind of data that's going to give us for developing the policies as our next step. So I'm really quite excited about that.
Do you know what it says to me is that even during this time of COVID, people are still finding a way to let their voices be heard and want to give input. So I like that. Just have to make sure we capture those that aren't online, but maybe with 100, be interesting to see if they wrote down the names, who those 100 people were, and if we did capture enough of our seniors population. That's fantastic.
Yeah. Well, key component of the question was demographic questions, so we can make sure that demographically, when we look at the data, we can determine if there's a major deficit in our seniors population as part of our data set, then we know we need to target those people better. And if that comes out of our data set when we put all this in and we analyze the data, then we can address that as required.
Yeah. Shelley, you were going to mention something?
I'll wait. It's okay.
So, Councillor Mitchell, now's the time to talk about the glossary or definitions and explanations. So we do have various opportunities. I think my recommendation, instead of fundamentally having sort of a glossary, is almost breaking the vision up into the key statement and providing sort of an interpretation or explanation of what that means for Port McNeill specifically, almost as a guide to the vision. I've seen that done many times, and it can be very effective.
So does that mean there is one already, or we have to create it?
We'd have to create it because the reason we'd have to create it is that this has to be specific to Port McNeill, right? And so what does this mean for Port McNeill versus a fundamental definition of rural from somewhere else? So what does a rural lifestyle mean for Port McNeill? What does what does community well-being mean for Port McNeill? All of that needs to be specific to Port McNeill, and we'd create it as part of our process and drafting of the OCP.
And ultimately, the way this vision is crafted and the way these guiding principles are crafted is going to determine what the bylaw changes look like that you're planning, right? Because they're going to be guided by this.
Yeah, so the policy framework or the policies that come out after this will be guided by the vision and guiding principles. That's the intent. Everything should be tied together and feed into one another so that you have this consistency and understand where, you know, if you have a policy on economic development, you know, and it says, you know, we want more tourism, you know, that's what we've heard a lot of that. Well, you should be able to track back this idea of we want more tourism and the actions that come out of that policy framework to your guiding principles and to your vision statement.
So would it be feasible to, I would find it easier, I guess, to start at the other end of this process and, you know, you decide what you want the bylaws to look like, because that's what we have to live with on a daily basis, right? What we're allowed to do and not allowed to do and how things are going to be regulated. If you start there, and because if you start here, what happens is somebody else, not the citizens of the community, creates the bylaw based on what they perceive these principles to mean. And the person that's saying, yeah, these are great principles, has no idea what that bylaw is going to look like. So if you start at the bylaw and work your way backwards, then you can write your vision statement to conform to what you actually want to do. I don't know. That's just my thought. I'm sure it's not the way you do it, but I'm trying to figure out how I'm going to know what the outcome is going to be by writing this, because I don't feel like I'm going to know what the outcome is going to be of that bylaw that's coming down in a couple of weeks. You're going to, if you haven't already started, you're going to start writing that, and it's going to conform to this, which I don't understand. So how am I going to know what the bylaw will look like? And so I think that's important, because the rural lifestyle that I see is quite different from what I hear people from outside saying when they drive around their community and they see boats and trailers parked on the side of the road, and they think that's awful. But maybe that's part of the rural lifestyle. And so maybe we need to, you know, we need to think of, so what does this all mean when we say it? So because I know ultimately the bylaw is what we're going to have to live with on a daily basis, or the bylaws.
So if I go back, here, let me scroll back here. So if we go back to this, this component here. So your bylaw fundamentally should be consistent. And it really, the bylaw that we're speaking of here really is your zoning bylaw, right? How that zoning works, where do the bits and pieces go? Right now, your bylaw is already created. You have your zones, you have everything already. Now, the real discussion that we will be having is where should that stuff go? You're not going to want to change all your zones and stuff like that, because what that will result in is a significant amount of non-conformity within your community. So what we want to do when we're dealing with the bylaw specifically is to ensure that the zones make sense for the community. And the biggest discussion is, where should those things go, right? Your bylaw exists. What it is about tweaking that bylaw to make sure it's consistent with the land use designation policy framework. The land use designation will fall out of your visions in that, but to tweak the bylaw before the land, like to fundamentally tweak where things should go at the zoning level, really doesn't make a whole lot of sense until we've had that comprehensive conversation with regards to the land use designations. So what I mean by that is, we have a residential designation. What does that mean for Port McNeill? Does it need to be broken down into low, medium, and high density areas within your community? If that's the case, what is low, medium, and high density for Port McNeill? Because low, medium, and high density in Campbell River is different than Vancouver, is different from Victoria. It's all different. So we need to tailor this specifically to Port McNeill and what it means for Port McNeill. From that, then you can look at the bylaw and go, okay, if we have a residential designation that's low, medium, and high, and we say, let's say for sake of conversation, high density in Port McNeill is 20 units per acre. Okay, where does that apply to Port McNeill? Why should it apply in those locations? And how is that supporting the vision and guiding principles that we've created?
Got you.
From there, then you take your zoning bylaw and you clean that up based on that, that discussion. Does that make sense? Please go ahead, Councillor Cole.
Yeah, and I just was thinking, obviously, this is a working document, so if we have to change this down the road, the vision statement, we can do that, right?
100%, yeah.
Got you.
But I would assume we have to be careful that we don't, that the intent is to change because something has radically changed, not change because we want to a bylaw to conform to a new vision statement, right?
So again, that vision, this is the community vision. This is what we heard from the community. And so if you're going to change the vision statement, that's a big consultation process you have with the community about going, has there been a material change in the community that suggests we should change it?
Sorry, Shelley, you weren't muted. I missed that last part, Kevin, that you said that you.
So if you're gonna amend your vision statement for your OCP, there's a significant amount of consultation that would go along with that, right? There'd have to be a material change in the community that shifted the community from going this direction to this direction, right? And then having that conversation as a community going, and there's nothing wrong with amending your vision statement. It's just about open conversation with the residents of the community to have that conversation.
Any comments on it? Go ahead, Derek.
If I could nitpick the wording a bit, that our second sentence down, that encourages the healthy living and is the hometown choice for families, as opposed to I don't know, they're just, and is a hometown choice for families and is the home choice of families, entrepreneurs.
Yeah. So
I don't know if anyone agrees with that, but.
So those kind of grammatical stuff and minor revisions, that's why we're having this conversation, right? And so if there is like those slight tweaks, the thing is we don't want to change the fundamental intent of what's here because this is what's come out of all our consultations. But to clean it up and to modify the language to ensure we're capturing that the ideas appropriately, 100%. And that's why we're having this discussion. So things like that, if you have those, you can tell me now, or you can mark it up. I sent you out that memo, mark that up, fire it back through to Pete and myself, and we can make sure that those things are captured.
Thank you.
Go ahead, Anne-Marie.
That second fosters, it is a place that encourages individual potential and embraces new possibilities.
Yeah.
You've already got fostered up above, so maybe encourages could be used there.
Yep, that's excellent.
That was the one I would have pointed out as well. Go ahead, Shelley.
I'm struggling with a couple words there, such as Port McNeill strives to create an atmosphere of well-being. Further down, the town provides an atmosphere and community where people can succeed. And I understand atmosphere is to be the mood, a sense of whatever. But I don't know, atmosphere just seems like an odd word to be using. I really, I'm not crazy about our opening statement at all. That's probably not how I'd lead into it.
You know, on that point in the first sentence, just as you were reading it out, Shelley, it says we're striving, but on that other second sentence, it says we're providing it. So are we striving or are we providing?
Well, that's the point too. And are we creating, when we say we're creating an atmosphere of well-being, I looked up well-being and one person's perspective of it, I'll share with you. And it says the 5 ways of well-being is to connect, be active, take notice, keep learning, and give. So I like the term of well-being. And I would say when I think of those 5 terms, they are active in our community currently, such as connect, I associate with belonging. Be active would mean health, healthy living. Take notice is compassion. We are a compassionate community. Keep learning is improving. We're doing that. Give speaks to volunteerism. So I guess, when we say Port McNeill strives to create an atmosphere of well-being, that would imply that none of those things are currently happening here. And I disagree with that. I believe that our intent, maybe as a council, as a community, is to take those characteristics of well-being that we have in our community and set the foundation to enhance them and allow them to grow, and to allow our residents to develop as people and participate regardless of who you are, your where you come from, that sort of thing. So like I said, I'm not loving that opening sentence at all.
Mhm.
I would concur on that too. When you read out the well-being, I think that it's a lot of what we have. Yeah. I mean, we really do look after each other. There's many active people. Yeah, there's so much of what you said is already and has and continues in our community. Plus the contradictory, like when Shelley read it out, if you can change that a little to capture that we want to be even better or something, or, but yeah.
Sorry, I'm actually just taking notes. I'm not ignoring you guys.
Oh, we can see your head down.
Those are awesome. Those are awesome points, and I see exactly what you say when you read it out and look at it, and for 100%. That's excellent. I'm not going to attempt to wordsmith it right now, but I'm just going to try and get the ideas down, so Pete and I can bounce it back and forth and sort of capture that, because I see what you say. Port McNeill is a community that already fosters well-being, like it's there, right? And that concept of well-being. And so start out with a statement basically saying, this is where we're at already.
Yeah.
And this is how we're going to get better.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Oh, go ahead, Derek.
Thank you. Yeah, it goes on about, rural lifestyle. I wonder about active lifestyle, if we could put that in there, because rural, is rural, but that sort of implies you're active out and about doing things. But I do feel that, people are pretty active here.
An active rural lifestyle, yeah.
Yeah.
So you don't think that's captured in healthy living? We want that to be more explicit?
Well, it's still, I think it's a little, oh, sorry, Derek.
Yeah, that's debatable, I guess.
Well, and it's different, right? Active rural lifestyle might be somebody on the water, in a boat, out on a quad. Not that that isn't healthy, but when I think of healthy, I think of walking trails, biking, kayaking. Yeah.
As opposed to in your big giant truck running around being active hunting or something, to me is not
Hey.
healthy living. No offense.
Is when you eat never mind. Organic meat.
Yeah, just a comment there. Maybe if we could slip active or some sort of thing along those lines in there.
Yeah, and those are all great points. Again, if we went back to the word cloud, you'll find that I think you guys are really hitting the nail on the head there. A lot of that terminology and those core values are very, very evident in the data that we have. So yeah, 100%, those are great comments.
To me, it's great that there is a synergy of people saying the same thing.
Yeah.
It may be a little bit of a different interpretation, but that you know, you hear the same thing over and over, to me, that's a good place to be as a community. You know, you don't have to rally people to not a viewpoint, but you don't have to try to, like, people are already there. I think that's probably why you're seeing 200 that have participated in the survey, the next survey.
Yeah, it's been excellent. So I have add active in. That would be like an active rural lifestyle or something.
Yeah, something like that.
Also, you know, this is where we're starting and this is where we're going around those ideas of well-being versus creating, striving to create. We're already there. These are our next steps type of idea to get that integrated in there. Those are the two big ones. And then obviously deal with the foster and foster that Councilor Barron brought up.
I think the other thing it does for community members, oh, sorry, Derek, I didn't see your,
No,
it's a
that's
small screen, so I'm finding it hard. What it does for community members, sometimes you will read a vision statement and you can get very defensive about your community or about your organization and go, well, we're already this and we're already that. And I understand that a vision statement is supposed to take you beyond where you're at. But I think starting it off with a positive hit, then people are like, yeah, that's what we are. And then, yeah, this is where we're going to go to. I think it creates that kind of a thing. Go ahead, Derek.
I just wanted to get anyone's comments on the closing sentence. I like it. I just wondered if we could chime in on that.
I haven't said anything because I like it. So
Yeah. Okay.
anybody else? I guess it's all okay. This is also a good thing because I know Shelley and I have been on other organizations, we're on boards together, and this can take up the better part of a strategic planning day. So that we're not all nitpicking it apart is actually really good.
No, I really appreciate the comments. I think those are all excellent comments. And again, those are exactly why we're meeting today, right?
Well, go ahead, Derek.
So, Kevin, will you get rid of atmosphere in there twice? I just don't think really we should have descriptives twice and foster.
Well, I'm also thinking, you know, and I think Councilor Downey said it, like, what the hell does atmosphere mean, right? Like that sort of idea. So I think what we'll do is we'll look at the idea of atmosphere and the intent of that word and try to come up with a few options instead of using atmosphere specifically.
Why not community?
Yeah, well, exactly. As be a lot more literal and straightforward. That's a great comment, Councilor Barron.
Okay.
Excellent.
What else do you need from us?
Well, if we're done here, the next thing I actually want to talk about is community well-being. So, we good? Any other? Okay.
I think we're good.
So I'm really happy you brought up well-being, Councilor Downey. I am unbelievably passionate about the idea of community well-being. To me, I believe that all official community plans should be wrapped in the context of community well-being, although a lot aren't. So I'm going to flap my lips a bit and talk about sort of how the Local Government Act looks at planning for communities, and then why I strongly recommend to communities to integrate the idea of community well-being versus concepts such as sustainable development or things of that nature. The Local Government Act basically says three things. You need to foster economic sustainability, environmental sustainability, and social sustainability in everything you do. And that's what represents good governance in a local government. Those are the three pillars of sustainable development, right? Which are fine. What I've found over the years working in this field is that when you begin to talk about the concepts of sustainable development to the majority of people nowadays, they just shut off, right? It's been the concept and the idea and the jargon has been used so heavily by everyone over the years that you tend to lose people when you start talking about this idea of sustainable development. You know, the intent and the nature of sustainable development is right, but I think it's been so poorly used that it loses people. So how do you have that conversation about the fundamental idea of, ensuring that your town is growing and that it's growing in a manner that the people that come after us are still going to be able to live in that town, that for generations to come, component of your vision statement. And the one that I've found ties these ideas best to the people living there is this idea of community well-being. And so this is a simplified diagram of community well-being, but speaks to what I see as sort of the 4 major concepts around community well-being. And what I like about community well-being is you define community well-being differently for every community, right? Because it's based on the value sets of those communities, fundamentally. They tend to fall into these general areas, but they're different for each community. So when we look at community well-being for Port McNeill, I go back to all of this information that we've collected so far and what people have been saying. And so if we look at those key areas of community well-being, we have social equity. Well, what have people been telling us about the key elements of social aspects of the community? Well, the biggest one is housing. The access to reasonable and affordable housing. Seniors, like everybody is like, we need to provide our seniors with services and housing. We need to provide transportation systems that anybody can use at any time. And the idea of healthy community. And I think here we could actually add that active living component also, Councillor Coyle, into this social equity. These are direct values that have come out of the consultations so far for Port McNeill. We move on to the next one, the idea of economic prosperity. This has been a major conversation we've all had in regards to how do we begin to ensure that Port McNeill is successful going forward. And a lot of it has been about, like you're talking about, Councillor Coyle, the ability for entrepreneurs to be successful entrepreneurs, the ability for innovation. Where did we come from economically, the resource-based industries, and where do we want to go? A lot of talk about tourism-based industries and creating Port McNeill as that place where people launch from when they're doing their ecotourism and the North Island tourism components, the base camp of the North Island, right? And so all of those really would fall into this economic sort of prosperity lens. The one thing that came through with a lot of the discussions with the focus groups was the need for improved telecommunications on the North Island. And so that was integrated into this one also. Did you have a comment, Councillor Coyle?
Well, no, just your last comment. I find interesting because we have fiber optic in every house. So what does that mean, improved telecommunications?
I think based on my conversations to date, it's more about service disruption.
Yeah.
Versus the quality of the service itself.
So one thing I just wanted to ask of you and of council, I was reading through the goals, and there's cultural vitality, and we've got recognition of First Nations heritage. And I was just thinking in terms of First Nations reconciliation and, trying to foster that with our neighbors. Could we put, could it be I don't know if this is going into our OCP, but just when I think of go back to economic prosperity, is there a place for, a point on First Nations, like, or saying, diversifying and supporting local business, Indigenous and non-Indigenous, or could that be an opening? I don't know. It just seems so, yeah, let's stick it under cultural because it belongs there, when maybe it could be stated somewhere else, because really there are some partnership opportunities with First Nations in our region. And it just would be good to maybe state it a little bit more within there. It's not shutting anybody out, but it's showing, in my opinion, showing inclusivity.
Yeah, no, 100%. Things of that nature, 100%. And certainly, this is first draft, right? And so, and again, that's why we're here today having these conversations. And so I think that's an excellent point. And it is like actually a conversation that we had with, I believe it was Jeff with Namgis, is about that idea of those partnerships for economic development and other development opportunities between the town and your local First Nations. And so I think that's a very reasonable consideration to add that to economic prosperity.
I would even say it could go in other sections too.
Yeah, exactly.
Really, yeah.
One
Sorry,
of the reasons I ended up adding it to cultural vitality is I had with probably 3 of the different focus groups, the idea of the importance of First Nations and recognition of the importance of the First Nations to Port McNeill was brought up by numerous people. And so I thought it was essential that we capture that. And so when we began pulling all this together, this is where we put it. There will be a section, I'm proposing a section for the OCP, about arts, culture, and things like that. And there'll be a section specifically in regards to the First Nations in the town itself, also as part of that section, of course. So cultural vitality, we touched on this. One of the things that came out very, very clearly, again, with all my discussions, is one of the most important aspects to almost everybody I talk to in Port McNeill is access to the natural environment. And it came out time and time again through all my conversations. It was awesome because it was that, as you said, Mayor Wickstrom, it was a consistent comment from different people in different meetings, all saying the same thing, and which reflects the importance of that as a community value. Last but not least, environmental sustainability. Again, that access to natural environment is a huge one. Talking to a lot of people, again, like I said, about this idea of sustainability or environmental sustainability, people aren't, they shut off. And so what does this mean to Port McNeill? It's going to be, there is a value set that people find the natural environment unbelievably important up there. But they not, I don't mean to, please don't take this isn't towards Port McNeill, but please don't take this. They don't look at the natural environment the same way as someone from Vancouver, right? You have people in Vancouver saying, oh, we should all be living in the city and protecting the environment. Well, that's great, right? But you have people that live in Port McNeill that interact with the natural environment every day and see it in a different light than someone from the city. And so that was a really common discussion I had with lots of people up there, is like, yeah, of course we want environmental sustainability, but we don't want what the people down in Vancouver want. That makes no sense for us. Our environmental sustainability and our access to the natural environment and the way we want to deal with the environment has to do with how we interact and live in this environment, not what someone down in the city is telling us what they think should be done. So that was a very clear message. So when I looked at this, it was really about more so the access and how people live with the natural environment. And then key things that are there, some of these are actually requirements, like the greenhouse gas reductions for public buildings. Those are requirements because of the signing on to the climate charter.
I would almost change the heading to a balanced environmental sustainability.
Yeah, and we can modify that heading too, right? Or again, I hate the word sustainability.
Yeah.
I used it here because it's the standard word used in community well-being. Maybe it should be environmental awareness, or I don't know, but.
Any other comments in this section from council?
So all
I
of
guess-
these.
Oh, sorry,
Okay.
Councillor Mitchell.
Go
Sorry
ahead,
about
Brian.
that. I was trying to unmute. I guess the only thing I see in a lot of communities, there's a big push to eliminate the use of wood for heat. Is there anything in here that would push us in that direction?
It's not something that I've contemplated to be truthful. The fundamental push for wood heat, the reduction in wood heat, isn't environmental sustainability element. It has to do with air quality. if you actually look at the use of wood as a heating source, it's carbon neutral. So it's actually a better heating source than many other heating sources if you want carbon neutrality in your community. Way better than natural gas from carbon neutrality perspective. So that's one of the ones that I've always sort of sat on the fence on, Councillor Mitchell, and that's going to be specific to Port McNeill. Is the use of wood ubiquitous, which I'm suspecting is quite a bit higher than a lot of other communities? And what is the implications for your air quality? And is that a significant issue for the town? So if you look at somewhere like who has air quality, Comox Valley has massive air quality issues. They're in the middle of a valley, they get inversions, and it takes all that wood smoke and actually presses it down in the valley. So you can actually go down to the valley at nasty times in the winter, and their air quality is the same as LA. It's horrible, nasty, nasty air quality because they're down in this bowl and all the wood smoke gets pushed down. You go to somewhere that has like a high level of winds, things like that, air quality is not an issue. And therefore, I would recommend in those areas that I probably wouldn't be recommending the reduction in use of wood for a heating source. Port McNeill isn't in a valley. I would be very surprised to find if there is an air quality issue caused from wood smoke the majority of time in the Port McNeill area.
Well, apparently there's some concern about it because there's no backyard burning allowed in Port McNeill, and that's an air quality issue, as you just discussed.
Yeah,
I'm just wondering if that's contemplated in here.
That's backyard burning is a little bit different though, because that's, I mean, back in the day, people, I remember visiting up here when I was a kid, and people had oil drums and they were burning everything, often quite noxious. Whereas we can have a backyard campfire, just not burning leaves and all that other stuff. Sorry, go ahead, Ken.
No. So the OCP itself will not create regulatory frameworks of that nature. If the air quality is something that needs to be contemplated, what the OCP would do is provide the framework for council to then explore if further regulation of those kinds of activities were required. Right, like if you wanted a burning bylaw or some way of phasing out wood stoves out of Port McNeill, then you would base that program or regulatory framework on your official community plan. That the zoning bylaw doesn't have the authority to regulate in that manner, and the OCP doesn't have the authority to regulate in that manner. That falls under your community charter bylaw rights.
Okay, thank you.
So I was just like, where was I at? So if we go back, so what my recommendation is for the official community plan is that we use the community well-being framework as the guiding principles to the community plan. And then we use each of these and we flesh them out. Oh, excuse me for a moment, someone's trying to call me. I just need to turn that off. Sorry, I gotta go. I'm in a meeting. No, I can't. Sorry about that. Microsoft Teams, I've always tried to figure a way to shut it off so it doesn't mess with me when I'm in meetings, and I still haven't figured it out. You think by now,
Your voice is very garbled now, and I'm not sure why that is.
How is that now?
Not great.
Is that better?
Yep, that's much better.
Perfect. I just shut Microsoft Teams right down. What I was just saying is, after being into COVID a year, like all of us, I'm still having some technological difficulties figuring out all the different background software that's running on my machine. So where I was at was, I am recommending that we use community well-being as the guiding principle framework for the community plan. From that, we'd then, as with these other sections, is that for each of the key areas, we'd identify key community values that fall under each of these sections that would then help guide the policy that we develop for the rest of the official community plan. That's my recommendation on how. So we'd have our vision statement, and then we'd have our guiding principle framework would be based on the community well-being framework, and we tailor that, of course, to Port McNeill with key elements under each of those guiding principle areas, which would then inform the policy framework for the document itself.
Comments, council? Go ahead.
Yeah, you can go back to that screen that had the seniors housing on it. Oh,
This one?
you were just there back, right? So provide seniors housing. So is that going to imply the town of Port McNeill is going to bang up some seniors housing? Would it not support seniors housing or something be a better way to phrase that? Or are we like through the OCP committing here that Port McNeill, the town, is going to bust out the 2x4s and build seniors housing?
Excellent question and excellent point. So if we take a step back, the official community plan is a guide for decision making. It cannot handcuff council to doing anything specific. So by using provide seniors housing, that's a guiding principle and goal. So what that means is that the town will work to find ways and strategies for more seniors housing to occur within the community. It doesn't mean council has to build it. Maybe council wants to. That would always be an option, but it does not tie council to actually constructing seniors housing in and of itself.
Would support seniors housing be a better way of phrasing that? Like if I'm sitting on the sidelines and I don't know anything about OCP, to me it looks like that's a huge plank in our in what we're doing. It's providing seniors housing. I'm just not sure that's our.
Sure, we could find some sort of wording or nature to actually address that. That's not an issue at all.
Sure,
But
maybe.
I just wanted to provide that point that if you use provide or whatever it is, whatever wording, that it will not tie council to a particular action. Like I said, the OCP is that framework for decision making in the future.
Shelley?
I guess my comment would be is that provide is stronger language. And if an outsider or a developer wanted to take a look at our OCP and see if there was an opportunity or a need here, the word provide is stronger, and they may pursue it further than support. Support just, is here's a resolution, that's great. Thanks for coming. So I like this as it is personally.
Well, on that note, then we should be saying provide affordable and suitable housing, because that's just as important is affordable housing for non-seniors. So if we're going to say we're providing seniors housing, then we should be also saying we're going to provide affordable and suitable housing, or slip seniors into the first bullet. But I think I made my point. I'll just leave it at that.
I find that, that sounds like a bit of a commitment. The word provide, that's all, to actually do something.
Yeah, and by putting the seniors housing and the access to diverse, affordable, suitable housing, for all, including seniors. I know it's very important for the seniors to be noted. They have given to our community, and so that if they just see a vague sort of definition, then they, by lack of a specific definition for them, it can be perceived as, being missed. But when you say access, that to me says action for council. So through bylaws, through resolutions, through possible funding, through, grant applications, whatever, that access to me speaks more action for a council.
Yeah, we don't have to decide on the wording for this right now, do we? We can just think about it.
I don't
Yeah,
think-
okay.
Well, absolutely not. We will have multiple opportunities to look at all of this again over the next few months.
Sure.
Anne Marie?
I like that it's included, sorry.
And I would assume that this would go out to the public too and say, this is where we're at and what do you think? And then, yeah.
Exactly. But those are great points, and I will contemplate some sort of wording in that regard to see if I can pop up with something in my head that might address those sort of key elements. Are there any other particular comments?
See any?
Economic prosperity, we'll look at the First Nations component for that one. Cultural vitality and environmental sustainability. I'm going to make a note. So from the vision and guiding principles perspective, that's all of the information that we have to date with regards to that. Most of this was sent in, all of this was sent in that memo that was forwarded through. From here, unless we have any other, we want to touch base a little bit more on this. I would like to start talking about what our next steps are.
Yeah, go ahead.
So we have some options moving forward. As I'd mentioned at the beginning of it, COVID isn't going away. We had anticipated that after the holidays that it would get more difficult. Now with the new variants coming out, the idea of in-person consultation looks like it's further out than probably what we even anticipated when we put the process on semi-hold. So what does that mean for us? What are our options moving forward? So before I get into that, I'll explain what our typical process was going to be and what some options are for us to continue moving forward with various aspects of the project itself. Pete, if you have any comments, please chime in as we've talked about this quite a bit over the last little while. So the next steps for us, specifically council and our team, is really to have a discussion about the zoning bylaw. We do have a first draft of the actual regulatory component and a first map. We know the mapping's incorrect, actually. The information that was given us by the RD, we reviewed it, and based on my knowledge of the community, I know there's some things that are incorrect on it. So we want to have a session with council to look at the zoning bylaw and the actual mapping. Going, okay, where's that map actually wrong? Like, where do we need to actually modify that? And also, so there's the first stage, and the second stage is where are uses that we don't want them anymore, or where we want other uses to occur. So that's sort of like, okay, we know that we don't want this here, we want this here, that kind of thing, and have that dialogue. So we want to have that session with council, kind of like this session, specifically with the zoning bylaw. We'd like to do that sometime in the next month-ish to get council into that. We also have wanted to be doing an active transportation session. We have a final survey for project prioritization, hopefully going out here very shortly. And from that, our plan is to have the first draft for review with council by the end of this month. And then, of course, we have the official community plan. So we have a lot of work to do. So we're going to be chatting a lot, which is great. All these are very exciting projects and are going to certainly help the community moving forward. But when we look at that and we look at, we can work with council to get this stuff ready, but we need to go back to the community at some point. And what is that going to look like? We know we have two options. We have the digital option and in-person options. Digital options are fine, but having conversation with everyone, and I'm to the point now too, I've been through so many of them. You can have reasonably good consultation digitally, but it's still not the same as in-person consultation. And the reason it's not the same is the sort of the side conversations that occur in personal consultation don't occur digitally. And so you lose something. Something is lost. Even if you can have a great workshop online with breakout groups and stuff, it's not quite the same because you're missing those side conversations that are so important. So that gives us some options on what we're going to do now and what that timing might look like. Our initial intent was to do some initial consultation, some touch points, the grocery store survey, which would have been awesome, all of that, and then go away, draft the OCP, and then do a workshop session with the community. If that's still the intent, we want to do that exact process, we are going to have to delay the timing of when we might think this is going to get approved. And that being said, we're not going to pin down what that timing is going to look like because all of it's COVID based, right? And so our team, we're happy to pivot however council and the town would like to proceed. Not a challenge or an issue for us. Happy to do so. We just as a team need to talk, okay, when do we want this approved by? What do we want this to look like? All of that. From the very get-go, meaningful consultation was the primary focus of our project. And I think that's the way it should be. If that's the case, then how we proceed is going to be very different than if we wanted to get this approved by the end of April kind of idea. So I'll open that can of worms up for discussion because I think this is essentially a very, very important discussion for us to have so we can plan out how we're going to address some of the challenges that we have right now with consultation.
Yeah, I think the ability to meet will probably come at least to the volume of people. I'm thinking 20 or whatever, because even Dr. Bonnie Henry alluded that weddings aren't going to be very big. You know, will probably come with the warmer weather. I don't see too much easing at this point with the cooler weather and the variant and so many unknowns and the unsuccessful rollout of the vaccine at the moment. One thing, just to backtrack though, that I was thinking, since we had such good uptake, it doesn't cover future consultations, but it would be really great, Pete, if we could do a boosted post. I'd even help with some wording, send it to Shelley. Like, do you know a senior? And have people, if we had that many people answer the survey, maybe somebody could, you know, go to their grandparent or go to their aunt or go to a senior that they know and work through that worksheet with them. And at least then we get a little bit more input to prepare us for the in-person from the senior population, if we haven't already. But just a thought on that, because if there's a lot of people who answered, there would be a lot of people, you know, even if a quarter of them say, well, I'll do that, I'll link up with a senior. Just a thought.
That is a great thought. I think what we do is once we have all the data together and we analyze it and see what the age demographics of who filled out the actual survey, we'll have a really solid idea if we need to definitely target our senior population a bit better.
There's also a draw involved. And so how long is this survey going for?
The survey is done this Friday.
Yeah, so it's not too late to, you know, maybe grandma will give grandson the iPad. So they might be motivated by that, an extra name in the draw.
Yep.
Anyway, sorry, we were talking about future consultation. Go ahead, Derek.
Maybe we're stuck with Facebook and it's just like maybe like one issue a week, like a concerted, everyone sees it on Monday morning, the latest question from the town about our OCP, and we can boost it, which we have a budget for, which I don't think we've really tapped into, and hopefully get some comments going. I'm not sure how to handle the in-person thing, but it was just an option of maybe to chop up the OCP in some more bite-sized pieces that are a little more easy to digest digitally.
Mm-hmm.
Ryan, I'll reach out to you because I know that you had some concerns around seniors in the in-person. Any comments that you'd like to make?
Well, I really feel that, as Kevin pointed out, there's a portion of the process lost if you don't have in-person dialogue, and you know, we're getting maybe as a council a little more experienced at using the online process, but somebody who doesn't use it all the time, not from a technical point of view, but from just a using, from a relating point of view, would find it difficult to use this process, and especially if they don't use a computer most of the time anyway.
Mhm.
And there's nothing like having 6 guys around a table arguing for an hour to come up with an idea, or 6 people, or 10 or 20, maybe even some yelling, and just get it out there, and you find out how other people feel about things that you didn't think were important, and all of a sudden you get a little bit of empathy for where they stand, and that doesn't happen using this 2-dimensional process. And I think we have to take a step back and say that is a must have. We cannot push this process forward using only the technology that's permitted by COVID rules.
Mm.
It's not right, because we have to live with it long after this COVID thing is over.
Mhm.
And so I think we just need to take a step back for a while. As I said 2 months ago, I haven't changed my mind. I think that the questionnaires are fine, but we all know that they're they're not the answer to everything. We need to hear what people have to say. The questionnaires are just one tool in the toolbox, and we need to have some public dialogue. We can't even go sit down and have a cup of coffee in the coffee shop and just chat with the boys and see what they're thinking. It's against the law. Like, it's nuts, but that's the way it is. We can't change that, but we can say, hey, this is a process that we need to do right.
Yeah, when you were saying heated discussion, that's exactly what I thought was the coffee shop, because that's usually where that stuff happens.
Yeah,
Shelley, you were going to say something? Oh, sorry. Were you done, Ryan?
I'm done. Yeah, go ahead.
Sorry. Go ahead, Shelley.
Is there a reason why standing out front of IGA is off the table?
The reason is you don't want dozens and dozens of people actually hitting an iPad and stuff like that, right? There's no problem standing out and sort of chatting with people as long as you distance and stuff to have conversation. That could occur, but I'm not too sure. Like down here in Campbell River, people are so COVID aware, they're not coming to talk to you anyway right now. Right. And I'm not too sure if it's the same in Port McNeill, if it's as heightened up there. We have several cases in Campbell River, so people are really conscientious here. You walk down the sidewalk and you go for a walk and people like giving you a 30 foot wide berth right now. So that'd probably be my main thing.
And the loss of the sidebar conversations that you have when you're in that. Yeah.
Pete and I've talked about this a lot, and this is what my recommendation would be, and I'll leave this with council to think about. We've had an amazing turnout on that survey. That was a very comprehensive survey, typically a little bit longer than I usually like to run, but we did it intentionally, lots of different reasons, and we've had an amazing turnout. The information coming out of that survey will give us enough information to draft an official community plan, a first draft. Because that's the way we tailored it, knowing what we were going into. My recommendation would be is that we take that, we actually draft an initial draft document for both the zoning bylaw and the official community plan documents. We go through and we clean them up and we get them to a point where we call it, this is our first draft, and we get it ready to take that to the community. And then we sit on them until we can do in-person consultation. And whether that's like 6 people per group or 20 people per group, if it's 6 people per group, we basically set up sessions, kind of like we did with interactive mapping, but way more intimate and way more focused. And we set it up like we would a typical workshop. A typical workshop for OCP is you'd have basically a table for each policy bucket with key questions and a facilitator at that table to discuss the key issues around that particular topic, economic development, whatever that policy bucket is. And you take 2 or 3 hours and everybody sits at a table and every 20 minutes they change and provide their comments. We collect that and we take that to finalize the document with. My recommendation is we get the documents to a point where we can plan on doing that form of in-person consultation when COVID allows us to do so. And then if we have to sit for a couple months and wait till June to do it, then we shut this portion of the project down until we can do the in-person consultation. Okay. That being said, we still have the active transportation plan to do, and it's due by the end of March. So no matter what we do, because of the provincial funding requirements of the grant that got the money for that project. So.
Go ahead, Shelley.
I would agree with what Councillor Mitchell had said. Is we've waited 24 years to, our OCP is 24 years. Waiting 4 more months isn't a hardship in my books. So I guess my question is, if we have that first draft, would we distribute that around the community ahead of time? Or would we be holding that until the meetings take place?
We have tons of different options when we get to that stage. We could circulate. We have a ton of different options, Councillor Downey, on what we do from that point. The challenge with circulating it beforehand is that we are going to get a bunch of comments in, right? Just because everybody will do it. And so we'll get a bunch of comments in, and how do you deal with those comments apart from when we do our consultation in the future? Do you integrate them in beforehand? How do you deal with it? So if you circulate it beforehand, it just becomes a little bit cumbersome to sort of manage the data collection, because they're going to be coming in sort of here and there, right? Unless you circulate and say, you give us comments by this date, but that sort of circumvents the fact that we're going to actually have sort of targeted consultation at a later date. So certainly can, but if we do it, we just need to sort of lay out what that's going to look like and what we plan on getting from that, or if it's just for dissemination of information, what that looks like, and be very clear with the community of why we're doing it that way.
Okay, thanks.
Councillor Mitchell?
I think that we need to make sure that, in my view anyway, that it isn't about the process. I don't care how hard the process is. It doesn't matter to me if getting the right information is going to cost more process. I think we budgeted for that, and we need to do it. The idea that we wouldn't share that in advance means that we've had all this time to consider it, those who drafted it and crafted it, and those that were actually going to say, you give us the final say, are going to get 5 minutes on it, or whatever short period of time we're going to give them to look at it and make their comments. I like the idea of people having time to ruminate, just like we get. When we know what we're going to hand them, let's hand it to them. These are the people that are paying the bills and that have to live with the outcome. So they should have a chance to look at it for as long as they need, not as long as we choose to give them, because it's more convenient for us to give it to them for a short time, because they're going to complicate our lives if they have it for a long time. It's okay if they complicate our lives.
So if I may provide some clarity to Councillor Mitchell. Yeah, no, I didn't mean that we wouldn't give it to them beforehand, but if we have it done and it's 4 months later that we're consulting, it can be a little bit odd for the people that get the document and they don't get feedback for 4 months because we're not doing our consultation for 4 months because of COVID. So it's not that we wouldn't provide documents beforehand. That's not my intent at all. You're 100% right. It's all about transparency and proper conversations in regards to the document. It's about that when we do provide it, having a system in place that we have the ability to collect the information that people are spending their time to give us, that we know how we're going to collect it, what we're going to do when we get it, and if we then have that information we get it on April 1st and we're not consulting till the end of June, how to bring that information we collect in April, how we bring that forward and be able to communicate that at the end of June. So it's having our system in place. It's not providing not giving the information to the community. 100%, they have the right and to see the information for sure. So yeah, maybe I wasn't clear in what I was saying, but yeah, you're correct.
I think my thought is that there's a balance, enough time to really sift through it so that when we get to the public consultation, I would be hesitant on asking for input prior to, because I think some of the people that would give really good input may also say, well, I've already given my input and I'm not going to go to the public consultation sessions. And those are the people that often spark a bit of a further conversation when you're there. Councillor Downey?
I think the sentiment really is if it's released sooner, people do have opportunity to ruminate over it, as Councillor Mitchell says. It just gives time to have those discussions around the dinner table and in different, between friends and just to flesh out maybe what it means to them. before we sit down and ask. I think it would have to be disseminated and with a hold your comment until this time.
Well, what we could do, you know, when we get there, because we're still a ways from there anyway, what we could do is when we do release it, we could actually release sort of a little sheet and go, here's some of the questions you may want to consider when you're looking at this, right? And just sort of little thing going, here's the OCP. This is what it's intending to do. Here's a few questions just to spark some sort of conversation that they may be able to have with folks.
We can certainly talk again when we get to that point. Councillor Mitchell, I think I saw your hand go up there.
You did. I guess the only concern I have is that I like to think that what we've done, the surveys and the sort of modified focus groups that we've had, those are 2 legs of the collection process. The third leg would be the real, actual, publicly attended meetings, whether small or large, but nevertheless free flowing meetings, and to create a plan without using the data that's collected from that third leg is going to bias the plan, in my view. And I think people need to be able to have their input before the plan is created. I'm not sure how you do that, but you need to collect which is what we intended to do. We intended to collect all the data through the 3 legs or more, and then create that draft plan. And now we're going to create the draft plan with 2/3 of the data collection method implemented. And we're going to do the third one, but we're going to seed it with what the other people already said. And so that biases the process, in my view. It speeds it up because now you got some bones there, and it may confuse the issue of hey, this has already been formulated. Whereas right now we're at the nowhere stage, so to speak, as far as the public is concerned.
Yeah.
And we're not releasing all these results because they're not all in yet. So I don't know. I just think, what's wrong with just putting a pause on it? Work on that thing that does have to be done. The transportation plan has to be done in the next couple of weeks, sounds like, or a month. And that sounds like a project that has to get done. So, and then sit on this until we can actually get to the public process, which we haven't been able to get to in a meaningful way.
If I may, the process that I've proposed, Councillor Mitchell, is the exact same process we'd be using before, except delaying the actual consultation component. You actually create a draft policy framework to actually have discussion with the community, so they have something to talk about. At this stage, it's that time to do so. It would be that time to do so if COVID hadn't happened. It's after this major survey is when you begin to draft your policy framework, so people actually have something to dig their teeth into when they're having the conversation. So all we'd be doing is actually delaying the next consultation piece, but the actual development of the draft plan for people to talk about is the next step in our original process also.
Sure, but it's missing the input of the public consultation, of the in-person.
No, the intent actually from our original process was survey, draft, and in-person consultation also. The only thing that changed in our process was the interactive mapping session, which was supposed to be a bigger, much broader in-person consultation. That was the only one that was tailored differently due to COVID.
And the focus groups were heavily modified in order to function. There was no focus group for seniors, for example. It didn't happen. There was no group of people sitting around a table talking about things. And I just really want to make sure this process is not pushed through because there's a time frame here.
Yeah, 100%.
Councillor Cole?
Yeah, no, I sort of I agree with the process Kevin just laid out, and just want to point out if there's gaps in the demographics, the survey should show that, and we could focus on those areas.
100%.
Thank you.
Yeah, if I think of other consultative processes that I've been involved in and use, for example, Port Hardy's pool even, it starts with the surveys, and then they presented a plan, and people went from there, backed it down from there, or go up from there. There's a risk if you don't present people with something that you're all over the place. And I think 250, if the demographics are correct and even are going to pretty much, it's going to give us a good good ideas to where people are going. And I don't feel it's going to be that much different, but definitely Councillor Mitchell, I agree with you and Councillor Downey, and that those in-persons do have to can like begin or be done before we can finalize that plan.
If I may just say, you know, we have 250 digital, we have 100 hard copy already. So it's going to be over 350 by the time we're done, which is fantastic.
Okay, good conversation. Anything else, Councillor Cole?
Okay. Chickens, backyard chickens. Kevin, is that in part of the zoning bylaw session? I tried to reach out to my fellow councillors, and one replied, the rest were chicken. I'm worried that it's a bit of a divisive issue, that it will become a lightning rod for OCP if it's part of it. I do believe we agreed to not include it in the survey. And I just put it right back out to my council and mayor that I was hoping we could get ahead of it and make a decision ahead. And I just wanted your thoughts, on, do you have a draft wording of a chicken bylaw, or if you could comment on that, please.
And while I'm going to tie two in, since we're going controversial. Another thing that we also set aside was Airbnbs, so short-term rentals. And so, you know, is this the kind of thing that would be part of an OCP, or is this the type of thing that would be flowing out of it and bylaws that we formed?
These are the type of things that we will provide regulatory framework for the zoning bylaw. So we will be providing the language to go into your updated zoning bylaw for these issues. So yes, we've already drafted some urban chicken stuff for the zoning bylaw. We've already drafted some general language in regards to vacation rentals for the zoning bylaw. So that is actually in there already. The next step would be, now when we have all that done, is these key controversial issues, we highlight them when we go to the community going, okay, here's the zoning bylaw. We've updated it. We've done some general housekeeping to clean it up, but we've also added some stuff. And here's the stuff we added. What do you think about it? Right? So people can openly, because the zoning bylaws are convoluted for even the best of us, right? And so you give the general zoning bylaw to any normal person on the street, that they're not fun to read, right? So we're going to have to highlight those key sections that are going to change, fundamentally change things, the way things are done in Port McNeill, highlight those so people can have conversation about them.
Go ahead, Derek.
Yeah, I just wanted to make the point. We decided, and correct me if I'm wrong, to not put the chicken issue on the survey or be part of the bylaw process. So to me, that would imply we were ready to make a decision one way or the other. So, right, we have Airbnb type questions on the survey, or is it planned to, how are we going to go to the public through the OCP process on chickens, Kevin? Yep. What was your understanding on how we move forward on that?
A great question. And so the survey predominantly focused on policy issues, high-level policy issues. The regulatory issues are zoning bylaw, right? So we're doing the policy piece, but we're also doing the zoning piece down here, right? And so when we come to zoning, you know, what we're doing in the zoning is going to be led by the policy. Food security has been highlighted numerous times as an issue people want to address. Urban chickens is a food security issue. If people, so we'll say, here's food security, here's urban chickens. Do you want it or not? And we have that discussion when we talk about the zoning bylaw before we adopt it. There's multiple opportunities for people to talk about it. There will be the consultation process that we're going to do in the sort of spring, summer. We'll talk about it then. And then there's also the public hearing. So that's when we talk about that, right? Because it's a regulatory issue that falls out of the policy framework direction that we have. Make sense?
So yeah, I guess to be patient on that, but I'm just worried any merit to the thought that this is a lightning rod that takes away from other bigger pictures. Like we should be concerned where we're, you know, expanding industrial or something and people are upset about chickens.
No, you know,
any experience with that? Or
well, yeah, you're always going to have the controversial issues and you talk about all of them. You know, this is, I think, goes back to Councillor Mitchell's comments. these are the conversations that are going to be happening, and these are the ones that we need to welcome, right? Just because we're proposing chickens and it might cause lots of conversation, doesn't mean it shouldn't be happening at a meeting where we're talking about expanding industrial uses either. Those are all the conversations that all happen in the same room with all the people in the room at the same time, so everybody can understand all the issues we're discussing for the community. That's the recommended approach, right? Because it gets the juices flowing, it gets people talking about these issues, right?
Okay, thank you.
Cut them out, and try to deal with each one separately, it's not a comprehensive approach. We're changing lots of stuff, right? It needs to be, we need to try to look at it as a community, as a big picture of all the stuff we're trying to achieve for the community, and have a comprehensive conversation about all of it.
Awesome, thanks.
Okay, I don't see any more questions. Anything else, or Kevin?
Very good. So what we'll do is Peter and I will go away. We'll put together sort of a draft plan of attack. The active transportation plan will be our next priority because of just the time frame for the granting. And so we'll put together a schedule for the active transportation. We can put a detailed schedule for that. And then we'll put just a tentative schedule with regards to the OCP and zoning bylaw. And it's all going to be COVID dependent in regards to what our next steps is for consultation, and that will be.
Okay. Thank you very, very much. That was very informative. Appreciate it.
Excellent. Thank you all very much for your time. Hopefully we'll get you an updated vision and guiding principles also to address all the comments we received today.
Thank you, Kevin.
Have a good day.
Thanks all.
Okay, item 6A. We have our considerations for changes to the town log. I'm going to preface it with, don't look at the mayor's message because it was a lot longer and it got hacked up, and it's just an example and it's badly written. So, but the rest of it, layout, what are your thoughts? I know that we did hear from Councillor Cole. He had quite a number of points. What are your thoughts? Go ahead, Councillor Barron. I saw your mouth open.
Sorry, everything disappeared as I was trying to hit the unmute button.
Okay, you did.
At the same
You
time.
didn't. All I saw was.
Do we, with this new website, have the ability for people to go to the website and sign up for the town log, or for some version? Like, I know I signed up on the Cumberland website and I get the Cumberland, whatever it is that they're sending out, whether it's, this is an upcoming meeting, this is what we're doing at the museum, it's garbage day, whatever. Do we have the ability to do that?
That's a very
And
good
then how, I don't think we would ever get away from the paper town log, but is there an opportunity for a hybrid version, even if it was so much as a managed email list at reception that went out, which then would decrease, eventually it would decrease the postage costs and the printing costs. And I kind of disagree with Derek. I like the fact that I can go to the drawer, I can grab my paper town log out, and I've got my one page on the back that's got my garbage and recycling days, and I've got the current month in there so I can grab it and look at the tides.
I like the idea actually of a opt out. So if you're talking about people who, seniors and those who aren't computer savvy, those of us then who are, would be able to say, I want to opt out of the one in my mailbox and have it, I just want to access the email, have it emailed to me all the time. We can, that's easy enough to do, I would think, through, if I think of my chamber days, through MailChimp. What are you shaking your head for, Shelley?
Just the experience from doing mail drops through the drugstore is when if you're doing a mail drop, well, I guess you'd have to opt out with the post office itself, but typically you get a cheaper rate when you do a blanket drop of material into mailboxes. So opting out might not be that easy.
Did you want to answer the question, Pete, Anne Marie's question?
Anything's possible. I think in terms of leading this discussion, maybe we should start with format, and then we'll jump into dissemination of the format after, because it may change things. If we're going to just go to a 2-pager, you know, a lot of it is about a good use of staff time. You know, creating an 8-page town log, something we still appreciate as a good use of staff time, especially, you know, as we move forward into technology. There's been more and more requests for us to have an online presence, and so that's sort of diversifying what our reception is doing, you know, without interruptions. She's taking what she told me. If she were to start in the morning and end at night, it would be full 8 hours of uninterrupted, just working on the town log. And that doesn't include printing. That just includes putting it together. So, you know, that's the question to council is that still a worthwhile use of her time?
Yeah, printing's something else when that actually gets done. Derek, you had a question?
Yes, thank you, Mayor Wickstrom. I was wondering, Pete, did you consider any third-party printing options?
No, not really, because we sort of wanted to start with this. If we could go to just a single sheet of paper, like in the example, the printing would be far less intrusive.
And one more question, is it proposed that it be color as per our agenda?
Again, that's up to council decision. Color does significantly increase the cost of printing, but it could be done if we're making cost savings somewhere else, like in the reduction of pages and the reduction of staff time to create it.
So does the cost analysis, is that for color or black and white? And what is the current practice is black and white in the mail, correct?
Correct.
And so this is for black and white?
Correct.
And how much more, I guess, it'd be good to know how much more color is.
Like twice as much.
Okay, thank you.
Downey, did you want to say something?
Just so I'm looking at the document, and I guess the question comes down to is what information should be on here. When I look at Sunset School says thank you, that's really nice, but would it not be better to put in there that your utility bill is, if you pay it by the end of December, you get a discount? That's more meaningful. I do like the Tide Guide included here, because when you need that, it's difficult to find. So we're a ocean community. Let's keep that. What else? Yeah, I don't mind. I don't mind the going down to 2 pages. The spiel, Port McNeil spiel, is that for real, or is that just somebody playing with words?
Really rhymes.
Wow, you're a poet, you don't know it.
Is that meant to stay?
No, this is
Okay.
just an example.
I like
I'm
it.
assuming that we would remain with town log.
Okay.
Oh, I like it.
Yeah.
Oh, look at everybody shaking their head.
I guess, if I may say,
Yeah, go ahead.
that, you know, for some people, maybe those community announcements are important, and they're not to me particularly, but maybe somebody really likes them. That the total cost of this thing is pretty low. So I don't know that. I think there's a lot of areas where we could tackle cost savings of much more significant value than what we're going to get here. I'm not knocking saving money. Don't get me wrong. You know me. I'm cheap. But so if it means keeping people informed and providing a venue for organizations to get some information out that doesn't cost them any money, and it really only costs us pennies to add a page to a mail drop that's already being paid for. Maybe it's a good thing that that we can put 4 pages out and it only costs us the small amount that it does. And maybe we want to be free to bump it to 5. However, make the proponents, the people who want to put information in, provide camera ready copy. And it doesn't take but moments to put a page, 2 half pages together and make a full page. And it's done. Like it shouldn't add a whole bunch of time to what's already being spent. And maybe tidying up some of the other things as Derek suggested. But I don't know if cutting it is really what we want to do. I'm not convinced on that.
Shelley, did you want to say something?
Like the color. I find black and white is dull and boring. I like the color.
Yeah, I like it when we get the color one in our mailbox. I actually prefer it.
Yeah.
I don't know why, but I'm all for change. Like I like the idea of having it be a one page. It looks kind of like a little newspaper. You know, I think of staff time. I think of it does take 2 days to print that out, and that ties everybody up. Nobody can print anything when that thing's going. It's going steady for a couple of days. Okay, maybe we could look at sourcing it out, but I'm not sure that that would cost us any less. And also there's some, I know Port Hardy has like a little booklet kind of a thing, and they do it every quarter. They don't do it every month. You know, we could look at doing it every quarter as well. Just a thought.
Well, when you make it so there's a bunch of links on there. They work great for folks like us, but do they work great for the entire community?
No, the links don't. It's frustrating if you get it and then you have to type all that in.
Or if maybe you don't even have a computer. So
Yep.
typing the link doesn't mean anything. It's just taking up space.
Yeah, but you can get it online, right? You can, if I am savvy, I know that I could go on the website, I could download the PDF version, and the link will actually go somewhere.
You bet. And if you don't have a computer, none of that matters. You need that hard copy in your mailbox with the information typed out for you.
Yeah. Oh yeah, I know. But I wouldn't eliminate it because people will find a way to get there if they are savvy. Councillor Barron?
Well, I think that right now, a lot of the groups are shut down. So a lot of that content that comes out of the article, advertising and articles policy, a lot of that content isn't there. Should Shelley be trying every month to hit 5 pages? No. If one month it's like if next month she goes to do March and March only takes her 2 pages, then we send it out as a 2-pager. We don't go looking for fluff to make it bigger. And then as we come out of COVID, we may find that it starts to cycle back up again. And then hopefully between now and then, we figure out a way to have it actually available either through an emailed out format or making sure it's on the town page and easy to find, easy access. And maybe we can get towards something like an opt-in or an opt-out system. But I know doing things month after month, year after year, to find that content, and you feel like you've said it 18 times in the last 6 months, it's a pain in the patootie. So
would council entertain like doing it quarterly instead of every single month? Do you think it's needed every month?
I don't think once we get the groups back up and running, I mean, how is it now for getting the content in because the cutoff's quite early in the month compared to when it actually goes out, right? It's like 2 weeks or a week and a half before the end of the month. Are you actually getting the events in there? Because it used to be a lot more event based. And I don't know if that's because we don't have as much going on or because my kids are so old now that I don't pay attention to those events, or is it just 100% COVID related?
I would say I've seen a decrease in the amount of events being advertised. Most people have switched to social media and look at the town log, secondary. I know that Shelley has really struggled and with absolutely everybody getting anything in by the deadline. We're often getting stuff in, on the 31st of the month or the 30th of the month, and asking if we can squeeze it in, and being as accommodating as we are, typically she'll take the time to rearrange everything to get it squeezed in.
Shelley, you had a comment?
I was going to say that some of the organizations I'm involved with, we talk about, can we get it into the town log? And more often than not, we've missed the cutoff and we don't try and push it. So if we went to a 2-pager, does that mean we could shorten up the time, or allow for more time for people to get input, so that that cutoff was closer to the end of the month.
Anything's possible. Yeah, I think that's why we're talking about it today, to see if we want to rejig how we're doing it.
So here's a radical suggestion. Why don't we change it to the town log? And why don't we do this month a one pager? See what people say. Okay, go ahead, Derek. Jeez, everybody's looking at me.
The first is the deadline. How about sending it out in the middle of the month? Do you think that might help people getting information in on time? I've looked at the town log, obviously, a bit. The amount of pages do vary, so busier months has been 4 or more pages, and some months 2. So that already is happening. And the mail out to everyone, to target mail outs, doesn't work. It's like way more in postage. And if people don't want junk mail in their box, they can personally opt in or out at the post office. So it's probably going to be pretty hard to get away from just shoving one in every single box, and way more. Then you got to stuff envelopes and personally address to people who opt in for mail. And my biggest concern is kind of like the printer running all day, and like those costs aren't in here either. I don't think, like sort of the maintenance of the printing and it being tied up. And again, I'd like to see if there's options locally or not to just print it somewhere else. Color. Our machine is perhaps not the best, most efficient color printer.
Okay. Councillor Downey.
What we haven't talked about is selling ad space on here. My hometown still publishes a monthly bulletin, and the businesses will buy the back 2 pages are just all ads, and that's how it's supported. We've never done that. Everything that gets submitted here is done, for free, right? It's to advertise and build community, but that is another conversation. For the times we're in and the position we're at right now, and with everything happening, I think we're okay to go to a one pager for say 2 or 3 months. When we get further on, I think that we would probably reconsider that. Right now, there aren't a lot of events happening. There's not a lot to report outside of what's happening here within our OCP, the active transport, and the zoning bylaw. But when those come forward, we might be tacking those onto this document. So,
Shelley, can I ask a question about your hometown one? Is it the town that actually does it, or is it the chamber? Because I know other communities do a town log type thing, and it's the chamber that does it, which is why there's the advertising on the back. Do you know if it's the town that does it or the chamber in Hudson Hope?
I would have to double check, but I'm confident it's the town that does it.
Just wondering. Would be good to know. Yeah, I had thrown out there, what does council think about just trying a one pager? But I didn't hear back from anybody. Well, except for Shelley. Shelley would be in support of it. And with Anne Marie, want to just give it a go and see what it'd be a great gauge, and maybe it would give us a place to go to. I don't know.
I think we would probably hear back almost immediately on the stuff that people are missing. Big change tends to drive that out. So, it might not be a bad idea to find out what is it that people genuinely use out of the town log, and what is some of the stuff that maybe is fluff that could be cut.
I'm sure they'll tell us.
I think we do need to add, the Tide Guide would need to come back on, because I know it's not just me. Lots of people use that document for reference.
Jean has an app with pretty pictures and everything. Okay, well, we could put it back on if everybody wanted to put the Tide Guide back on, or we could just throw it the way it is and see what people are asking for. What's your pleasure, council? So I generally hear, let's try it for 1 or 2 months and see what people say. Yes, no? Do we need a motion, or recommendation that we go to a one-page, a single-page town log for a month or two, gauge the public.
Yes, please.
Can we entertain adding color to that?
Yes. Yeah.
I think that would, people probably be
Okay,
happy if they had a nice color one pager and
Color
it
one
made
pager,
a better
yeah.
transition. I don't know.
good point.
And we'll maybe have a better idea of the cost of color. We could just try it and reevaluate.
Okay, so is it somebody, I'll make that motion. Somebody want to second it?
I'll second it.
Any further discussion on that? Councillor Mitchell? I can't see you, but I see you're unmuted. Okay. Take that as no further. Okay, so all those in favor of that recommendation then? Opposed? Carried. Okay. Alrighty. And then the 3% MRDT. I will confess, Pete, I was going to touch base with you. Is this coming up for renewal in the next little bit? Is that why this you were asking for council's input on it?
Jolie White sent out an email to Councillor Cole, and I do believe yourself about a month ago. I forwarded it on to all of council. Let me see if I can pull it up again here, just to refresh what it said. It was a request, I do believe, to get all of the communities in line.
Yeah, and that takes a bit of work once that decision is done. That'll mean, which is what I if I understand, Vint would be contracting out to do that work and align everybody the same. I think the conversation would be, and Shelley and Derek, you can chime in. Currently, for example, Port Hardy collects the 3%, but they 2%, they give, is it 60 or 80 we give to the RD for Vint, and they keep the 20%, but the 1% extra, they also retain. So I would make the assumption that if we went to 3% and we could get our hoteliers on board with that, that we were looking also to retain the 1%, but continue the other 2% split the way it currently is with Vint. Is that correct, Councillor Downey or Councillor Cole?
That is my understanding. That's what we would be looking for. And the rationale behind that is other areas within the RD are going to 3%. So if we don't, we would be the only community that is at 2.
Yeah, but I think it's very important to communicate with the RD, I think, who's doing the contract lead on this, that, or Vint, who's doing the contract lead, that we would want to retain that extra 1%. Otherwise, it will all be rolled in to Vint. Go ahead, Derek.
Thank you, Mayor Wickstrom. Yes, we just had a meeting, Vint meeting recently. And this was discussed, and I see it as problematic. Like if Port Hardy was going to change and everyone put the 1% regionally, then it could work. But I just don't see it really working. But there's a pretty strong argument for if a local municipality is not organized with their marketing plans, etc., maybe the money is better spent regionally by Destination BC. But I think we're on the right path to utilizing that money. I just wanted to make that point. And yeah, and it's across the majority of the province is 3%. It's not just our area. So we're a bit of an outliner.
And just to clarify, it's not used by Destination BC. All the MRDT that's collected stays in the region. It would be Vint and is administered by TAVI right now, Tourism Vancouver Island.
But that's the overnight, the top answers to Destination BC.
Mm-hmm.
So out of this, it would be good if we want to make the decision now, or, it begs the question, do we put it to our tourism advisory committee?
Well, we could make I believe, just to flip over to Shelley, is that the Tourism Advisory Committee, have they discussed this and they are in favor of retaining the 1%?
You know, I would have to revisit my notes and find out. Yeah.
Okay, so I think it would be prudent then for us to hear from them. You have a discussion and have them bring a recommendation. We'll talk about it and then we'll, I'm hearing that, you know, I think we could communicate to Councillor Downey that council is generally in favor of retaining that extra 1% within Port McNeill, but see what the tourism committee has to say. Councillor Cole?
Yes, we could entertain maybe for the tourism committee, Jolie or somebody from Tourism Vancouver Island could maybe speak to the MRD. It's pretty complicated. And by the same token, I understand it, and I think members of council do, but if council needs a refresher on how all that works, they are available to do that.
Okay, go ahead, Pete.
Yeah, so I did pull up the email from Jolie, and actually to just expand on what Councillor Cole is saying, one of the lines, we would like to request a consultation session with the Port McNeill Tourism Advisory Committee that will be led by Kayla Matthews from TVI. So she's actually asked for that.
So I would say go ahead, Shelley, and do that. And then if you can apprise us of the date that that's occurring, we can
Okay.
all sit in and have a listen as well. And then that enables them to kind of cover 2 meetings in one, and we can have the information. Councillor Cole?
I was just going to say, and there is time. It's not a huge rush here. So.
It's good to get the conversation going though. Yeah. Okay. All right. That's it. Motion to adjourn. Seconded, all in favor. Just to let you know, we will be, I forgot to acknowledge that we are on the traditional territory of the Kwakwaka'wakw speaking peoples. Forgot that, my apologies. And also to let you know that we have some other committee of the whole stuff, so there'll be another meeting set up. I'll be meeting with Pete to figure out what's on it and send out dates for you guys as well. Thank you very much for answering the doodle poll in a timely way. Oh, questions? Sorry, I think Bill left, but I'm just going to check. No, that's it. Talk to you later.
Okay.
Before you go, did this time and day work for you? Could we tentatively think next Tuesday? Oh no, that's a council meeting day.
Yeah.
We're not in session anymore. You can just talk over each other now.
I just wanted to say I would have appreciated
recording
like,
Hang on, you can start recording them. Sorry.
I was just going to say I would have appreciated like Kevin's presentation ahead of time and